I shade of the suitcase I packed that day. Cheap navy blue with a broken zipper that snagged every time I tried to close it. The fabric was frayed, the handle bent from years of use, and somehow, it felt like the perfect metaphor for how I'd been treated in that house. 16 years old, standing in the middle of what used to be my bedroom, folding clothes with numb fingers, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Mom didn't cry, not even a hint of guilt in her expression as she stood in the doorway, arms crossed like she was the one being wronged. Her tone was flat, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this in her head 100 times. "It's just not working anymore," she said, like I was some broken appliance. "Paul and I, we're trying to create a stable home. A fresh start. Stable." That word echoed in my chest like a punch. What had I been then? A storm? A disruption? A leftover from a life she didn't want anymore? I glanced around the room, my room, though it already felt like it belonged to someone else. Posters were gone from the walls. My old gaming console had mysteriously disappeared last week, probably thrown out or donated. The bedding had been changed to something neutral, like they were staging it for an open house. I wasn't just being sent away, I was being erased. She walked in with a cardboard box and set it next to my suitcase. "Here," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Some of your things. Photos. Old school stuff. Thought you'd want them." Photos. Funny, considering we hadn't taken a family picture in years. I peeled open the box and saw a few dusty frames, crammed between a stack of report cards and a soccer medal from 5th grade. I picked up one photo. Me, age 7, grinning in a paper crown from Burger King, Mom's arm around my shoulder. She looked young in that picture. Lighter. Before Paul came into the picture. Before she stopped seeing me. "I don't understand," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why now?" She sighed and turned away, busying herself by straightening a lamp that didn't need straightening. "Paul's kids are coming to live with us full-time. They need stability, space. It's not fair to them." "What about what's fair to me?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Her expression turned cold. That switch she always flipped when she wanted to shut down emotion. "You're almost grown. Your uncle has agreed to take you in. It's for the best." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. But inside, something caved in. Like a part of me folded over and sealed itself off. I realized then that her mind was made up. I could have said 100 things, reminded her of the nights she held me during storms, the scraped knees she used to kiss, the lunches she used to pack with little notes inside. But none of it mattered anymore. I didn't fit into her new vision of life. The ride to Uncle Ray's place was silent. She didn't even get out of the car when we pulled up to his rundown apartment building on the east side of town. Just popped the trunk and said, "Be good." Like I was being dropped off at summer camp. I stood there for a moment, watching her taillights disappear down the street, feeling like I'd just been left behind by the last bus out of town. Uncle Ray wasn't cruel, just distant. A man of few words who lived alone, smoked too much, and seemed permanently glued to his recliner and football games. He cleared out a corner of his spare room for me, tossed me an extra pillow, and told me dinner was usually microwave lasagna or takeout, depending on the day. That first night, I lay awake on a creaky cot, staring at the water-stained ceiling, trying to understand how quickly everything had unraveled. I hadn't done anything wrong. No drugs. No arrests. I got decent grades, stayed out of trouble. But I still wasn't enough. Or maybe I was too much, a reminder of a past she wanted to forget. I kept waiting for a call, a text, a sign that she regretted it, that she missed me. But days passed, then weeks, and nothing came. Not even on my birthday. The silence was loud, suffocating. School felt like a blur. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I made up some story about moving in with family to be closer to school. No one asked many questions. I floated through the halls invisible, like I was some ghost only half tethered to the world. I ate lunch alone most days, buried myself in books and whatever part-time gigs I could find, stocking shelves at a grocery store, delivering newspapers before dawn. Anything to keep moving. Anything to avoid thinking. But every time I walked past a kid with their mom at the store or saw a family laughing over dinner at a diner, it hit me like a slap. I wasn't part of that anymore. I was the discarded one. The inconvenience. Yet somewhere in the pain, a small fire began to grow. I didn't know it at the time, but that rejection, it lit something in me. A resolve. If I was too much for her, too inconvenient, then I'd become someone she couldn't ignore. I'd become someone impossible to discard. Waking up in Uncle Ray's apartment every morning felt like being stuck in a life that didn't quite belong to me. The walls were stained yellow from cigarette smoke. The air always smelled like stale beer and something fried. My corner of the spare room was barely big enough for the cot, a duffel bag, and a plastic crate I used as a nightstand. But I didn't complain. I didn't ask for more. I knew better than that now. Uncle Ray wasn't cruel, just attached. He worked nights at a shipping warehouse, came home when the sun rose, microwaved frozen burritos, and passed out on the recliner until it was time to do it all over again. We rarely talked. He didn't ask about school. Didn't care if I came or went, as long as I didn't touch his stuff or rack up the power bill. It was a quiet understanding between two people who had no idea how to belong to each other. I started waking up at 4:30 a.m. to deliver newspapers. The job paid pennies, but I didn't care. It got me out of the apartment before the walls closed in on me. After school, I worked a few hours at the local grocery store, shelving canned food, mopping up spills, bagging groceries for people who didn't look me in the eye. I'd come home with aching feet, pockets full of change, and a hunger that went deeper than food. No one called. No one visited. On my 17th birthday, I sat alone in the cramped kitchen, eating a slice of off-brand frozen pizza I bought with my own tips. I watched the candle burn down to nothing, pressed into the crust. Didn't even make a wish? What was the point? I taught myself how to cook with whatever scraps I could afford: eggs, rice, instant noodles, canned beans. Eventually, I got good at it. Better than I expected. There was something satisfying about making something out of nothing. About feeding yourself when no one else will. School was the only place I felt like I still had some control. I sat in the back, always quiet, always watching. I stopped raising my hand. Stopped trying to make friends. But I paid attention. I took notes like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. I knew the only way out of that apartment, the only way out of being forgotten, was through my own damn effort. I spent nights online in the school library or at a rundown public internet cafe downtown when I had extra cash. That's where I discovered coding. At first, it was just curiosity. I watched videos, copied lines of code from forums, broke things, and figured out how to fix them. Over time, it became an obsession. Building something from scratch gave me a kind of power I'd never had before. No one praised me. No one cared. But I did. There was a moment, I remember, when I got my first program to run, a basic app that calculated tips for restaurant bills. I stared at the screen and felt this flicker of pride. It was small, insignificant to anyone else. But to me, it meant I could create. I could grow. I could win, even if no one else was watching. I saved every dollar I could. No sodas, no video games, no distractions. My jeans had holes, and my shoes were too tight, but I didn't complain. I had a mission. My walls were plastered with sticky notes, goals, formulas, reminders. Apply to every scholarship. Study until it hurts. They don't care. Do it anyway. I became ruthless about my time. When I wasn't in class or working, I was studying or coding. The other kids partied, dated, lived their lives like nothing could ever go wrong. But I couldn't afford that kind of luxury. My past was a weight on my back, pushing me forward, faster than all of them. I wasn't just trying to succeed, I was trying to survive. And yet, despite the exhaustion, I never missed a day. Not from school, not from work, not from life. I was afraid that if I slowed down, I'd start thinking too much. Start remembering the way my mother used to braid my hair when I was younger. The way she'd laugh when I told her stories. The way she used to say, "You're my whole world," before everything changed. Before Paul. Before perfection became more important than blood. I used that ache. Turned it into fuel. I started entering coding competitions online. Free ones, of course. I couldn't afford entry fees. I lost most of them. But each time I failed, I learned something. Got sharper. Quicker. Eventually, I started winning. A $50 Amazon gift card here. A certificate there. Nothing life-changing, but proof I wasn't just dreaming. Proof I had something real inside me. Still, not once did I hear from her. Not a text. Not a holiday card. Not a single, "How are you?" Her silence carved itself into my bones. It hardened me. People say time heals all wounds. But silence? It scabs over you in ways that never fully close. One night, I sat in that dim kitchen, laptop open, bank statement pulled up. I had $312 saved. It felt like a fortune. I looked at the money, then at the scholarship list I'd bookmarked, and I made a decision. I would leave. Not just survive, but escape. Not just build a life, but build something unshakable. I didn't know how yet. Didn't know what the next step would look like. But I knew this. No one was coming to save me. I would have to save myself. The day I got the scholarship email, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't jump up and down with joy like the kids in those college acceptance videos. I just sat there, alone on the lumpy cot in Uncle Ray's spare room, staring at my cracked laptop screen, letting the words sink in. Congratulations. You've been awarded a full academic scholarship to Eastbridge University. I read it again. Then again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, shaking slightly as if the message might vanish if I clicked the wrong thing. But it didn't. It stayed there, bright and solid and real. Full ride. Tuition, housing, meal plan, books. Everything. I leaned back, exhaling so hard it made my vision blur for a second. The room looked the same, cramped, messy, dimly lit. But everything had changed. I had done it. I had carved a way out with no backup plan, no safety net. Just me and every ounce of willpower I had. I didn't tell anyone. Not Uncle Ray. Not the guidance counselor at school. Not the store manager where I still worked shifts bagging groceries. I just printed the acceptance letter, folded it carefully, and tucked it into the pocket of my jacket like a secret weapon. That final summer before college was a blur of silent determination. I worked as many shifts as I could. Morning papers, afternoon bagging, evening coding freelance gigs whenever I could get Wi-Fi at the public library. I ate the same meals on repeat: eggs, rice, instant noodles, stretching every dollar. I didn't go to any graduation parties. Didn't sign yearbooks or pose for pictures. I didn't need memories of that place. On the day I left, I packed everything I owned into one duffel bag. I stared around the room, at the dented walls, the wobbly lamp, the bed that had never quite felt like mine, and I didn't feel sadness. I felt release, like I was shedding a skin that had grown too tight. Uncle Ray was asleep in the recliner when I left. I didn't wake him. I scribbled a quick note on the back of a grocery receipt. Thanks for the roof. I won't forget it, and placed it on the kitchen counter next to the remote he always lost. Then I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. Eastbridge wasn't some elite Ivy League castle on a hill, but to me, it was heaven. I shared a small dorm room with another scholarship kid named Felix who kept his side of the room military neat and didn't talk much unless it was about chess or calculus. We understood each other, two ghosts trying to build themselves from ashes. I buried myself in my classes: computer science, data structures, algorithms, ethics, and technology. I sat in the front row, answered every question, turned in assignments early. I was the first to arrive at labs and the last to leave. While other students partied or wasted weekends sleeping, I coded. I obsessed. I devoured every book, every online course, every free certification I could get my hands on. I remember one night in particular, maybe 3 months into my freshman year. It was nearly 3 a.m., and I was in the university library, the only light coming from the green desk lamp above me. I'd just finished building a prototype for an app that helped people track and split shared expenses. Nothing fancy, but functional. I leaned back in the chair, fingers cramped, eyes bloodshot, and I felt it again. That flicker of pride, like a spark inside my chest. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was purpose, and that purpose made me feel alive. By the time I was 20, I had internships under my belt, freelancing contracts with small businesses, and a quiet little network of people who paid me to solve problems they couldn't. I wasn't rich, but I was surviving on my own terms. And that meant everything. I stopped checking my old social media accounts, deleted my old number, changed my email. Not because I was hiding, because I didn't want to give anyone from that past the chance to find their way back into my life. I had cut the cord, and I wasn't going to reattach it. At 21, I had a crazy idea. What if I stopped working for other people and started building something of my own? It started in the basement of a worn-down student housing complex I rented after moving off campus. The ceiling leaked, the Wi-Fi sucked, and the radiator clanged like a haunted bell tower. But I had my laptop, my ideas, and a cheap desk I dragged from a dumpster. I called my project Gridbolt, a streamlined platform that helped small businesses manage invoices and inventory in real time, with zero tech experience required. I worked on it day and night. I coded until my fingers went numb. I skipped meals, lost sleep, and turned down dates and parties. People didn't get it. My professors warned me not to burn out. My classmates laughed behind my back, The scholarship kid thinks he's Steve Jobs now. But I didn't care. I had no time for doubt. I had built myself from nothing, and I wasn't going to stop now. By 22, I launched the beta version of Gridbolt. It was clunky, imperfect, but it worked. I pitched it to a local startup incubator, heart-pounding, voice-shaking. I walked out with my first investment check and a 6-month mentorship deal. That check didn't just fund my business, it validated me. 2 years later, at 24, Gridbolt got acquired. The day the final paperwork came through, I sat in my new apartment, top floor, glass windows, view of the city, and tried to feel something. Joy, satisfaction, relief. But what I felt, more than anything, was peace. I had made it out. I had built a life from the rubble they left me in. Not for revenge, not even for pride, but because no one else ever believed I could. But now I was just getting started. The first time I stepped into my new condo, I didn't say a word. I just stood in the middle of the open living room, my footsteps echoing off the polished wood floors, sunlight pouring in through floor-to-ceiling windows like something out of a movie. The city stretched beyond the glass, sharp angles, distant car horns, people moving below with no idea who I was or where I came from. And for once, I didn't feel like a ghost. I set my keys on the granite countertop and walked slowly through the space. High ceilings, stainless steel everything. A bedroom with blackout curtains, a walk-in closet, and a rainfall shower that felt more luxurious than any hotel I'd ever stayed in. I opened the fridge, even though I knew it was empty, just to hear the click, just to feel like it was mine. I was 24, a self-made millionaire, and not a single person from my old life knew. Gridbolt had exploded. The acquisition had taken months of meetings, negotiations, legal reviews, but in the end, it closed clean. A clean break, just like I'd always wanted. The wire transfer hit my account while I was sitting at a cafe coding a bug fix. I didn't scream or throw my laptop. I simply refreshed my banking app, stared at the number, and let out a slow breath. I had done it. The money didn't make me feel invincible. It made me feel calm, like the chaos I'd carried for years finally had a place to land. I used part of it to move into the condo. Bought a sleek car, nothing flashy, just quiet, fast, efficient. I invested the rest in other startups, some of them led by kids who reminded me of myself. Hungry, sharp, alone. I never became flashy, though. No chain around my neck. No private jet selfies. I stayed off most social media, kept my name out of clickbait articles. I wasn't chasing fame. I was chasing freedom, and I had finally caught it. But freedom, as it turned out, was quieter than I expected. Peaceful, but also lonely. I spent my days mentoring, building, learning new systems. I took early morning runs through quiet neighborhoods, ate at places that used to intimidate me, and read books about leadership, psychology, and human behavior. I liked knowing how people worked, especially the ones who'd written me off. Then one morning, everything shifted. I was sipping coffee on the balcony, laptop open, checking my emails when a notification popped up, Tech Edge Weekly, the self-made tech wizard you've never heard of. The article was about me. Someone at the startup incubator I pitched to had leaked the story. My photo was at the top, smiling awkwardly in a blazer I didn't remember owning. I clicked it out of curiosity, heart ticking faster. The write-up was flattering. They called me disciplined, resilient, brilliant even. Talked about how I'd grown up in modest circumstances and climbed my way up. They mentioned Gridbolt, the acquisition, even quoted one of my earliest pitches. It wasn't dramatic. No sob story. But it was enough. That's when the emails started coming. Then the texts. Then the call. Her name appeared on my screen like a ghost rising from a grave I'd already buried. Mom. I stared at it for what felt like hours. I hadn't spoken to her in almost 8 years. Not since she dropped me off at Uncle Ray's and drove away without a single glance in the mirror. My thumb hovered over the red button. Decline. Let it ring out. Forget it. But something in me clicked. Not forgiveness. Not curiosity. Just readiness. I needed to hear what she had to say. So I answered. Hello. Her voice came through syrupy and soft, like she was trying to rewind time. Oh my God, she said. It's really you. Silence stretched. I didn't feel it. I saw the article, she continued, her tone rising with carefully wrapped excitement. I can't believe it. You've done so well, baby. I always knew you had it in you. I almost laughed. The word baby hit me like a slap. She hadn't called me that since before Paul entered our lives. You always knew? I said, keeping my voice flat. She hesitated. Of course. I've missed you so much. We should reconnect. Have dinner. Maybe. Catch up. Reconnect. Like we had just drifted apart. Like I hadn't been thrown away. Why now? I asked. I just. Her voice cracked a little, calculated just right. I saw your face and remembered how much I love you. We've all missed you. Me, Paul, the kids. The kids. Her real family. I could picture them, all grown now. College-bound, probably. The family she chose. The family I never fit into. Still, I agreed. Not because I wanted closure. Not because I missed her. But because I needed to see it with my own eyes, the face of the woman who had decided I didn't belong, now trying to pretend none of it ever happened. I hung up without a goodbye. Stared out at the skyline again, everything golden in the late morning light. She thought she knew me. But the boy she left behind? He was long gone. The man who answered her call? He was someone entirely new. I sat in the parking lot for nearly 20 minutes before I walked up to her door. The neighborhood was as manicured and polished as I imagined it would be. White fences, hydrangeas blooming in perfect symmetry, SUVs gleaming in wide driveways. It was a neighborhood built to impress. A place where people wore smiles like armor and kept their imperfections tucked neatly behind designer curtains. Her house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, twice the size of the one we used to live in. Cream stucco. Blue shutters. A porch swing. I watched the wind push it gently back and forth, and for a second, I wondered if she'd staged it that way on purpose. Like some twisted version of nostalgia. Like I'd ever had a porch swing to sit on. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. Crisp button-down, dark jeans, clean shave. I looked like someone she could be proud of, if she didn't already know I was the same boy she discarded. The boy who used to ask for her attention, her love, and eventually stopped asking altogether. I walked up to the door, rang the bell, and waited. It opened too quickly. She'd been waiting. "Hi, baby," she said. Eyes already glossy. She stood there in some soft pink sweater and pearl earrings, her hair done in loose curls, like she was playing a part. Her smile trembled just enough to appear sincere. "You look incredible." I didn't hug her. Didn't smile. I gave a small nod and stepped inside. The house was warm. Too warm. Filled with the scent of cinnamon candles and some expensive diffuser humming in the corner. Framed photos lined the hallway. Her husband, the kids, family vacations, graduations. Not a single trace of me. Not one. Like I'd never existed. "Dinner's almost ready," she said, leading me into the kitchen. "Paul and the kids are dying to meet you." I nearly choked on that word, kids. Like they were the only ones that ever mattered. Like I hadn't once been her child, too. "Sure," I said, keeping my tone steady. "Let's meet the family." The dining room was already set. China plates, folded cloth napkins, wine glasses. She was really going for the picture-perfect moment. A Hallmark resurrection. Paul stood when I walked in. Tall, silver-haired, the kind of man who looked like he belonged on a golf course year-round. He smiled like he knew me. Like I wasn't the loose end he'd helped tie off years ago. "You must be the genius," he said, reaching out to shake my hand. His grip was firm, rehearsed. "We've heard a lot about you. Congratulations on your success." "Thanks," I said, pulling my hand back. Then came the step-siblings. Ava and Lucas. Early 20s, maybe. Polished, polite, college sweatshirts, and perfect teeth. The kind of kids who grew up believing the world would always make room for them. They each said some variation of, "It's so cool to finally meet you," like I was some exotic relative flown in from another life. We sat. Plates were filled. Conversation started, light, controlled, the way people talk when they're pretending things are normal. They asked about my company, my condo, my car. They laughed when I told a sanitized story about my first failed prototype. My mother beamed every time I spoke, as if she had something to do with any of it. "We're just so proud," she said, placing a hand over mine. "I always knew you'd do something big." I looked at her hand on mine. Pale, soft, unfamiliar. "Did you?" I asked. She blinked, thrown off. "Of course." I took a slow sip of water, then set the glass down gently. "You haven't called in 8 years." The table went still. The air tightened. Paul cleared his throat. Ava looked down at her plate. My mother's hand slid back into her lap. "I know," she said softly. "It's complicated." "No, it's not," I replied. "You made a choice. You picked a new family. You erased me." She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Paul leaned in, smiling tightly. "We're all trying to move forward. That's what matters now." I turned to him, expression calm. "Moving forward doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen." Another silence. this one colder. Then, like clockwork, she shifted gears. I know it's a lot, she said, voice trembling just the right amount. But we were hoping, maybe, we could rebuild. Start fresh. I let her words hang in the air, like fog waiting to lift. Then she said it. We were also wondering. I mean, you've done so well. And your stepbrother and stepsister are both applying to college now. We don't want to pressure you, but a little help from you could make a big difference. There it was. Not a request for forgiveness. Not an apology. A request for money. I stared at her for a long moment. Not with anger. Not even surprise. Just quiet recognition. I see, I said. It's just college is expensive, Paul added quickly. And you've built such a strong foundation. It's a wonderful opportunity for them. And I was 16, I interrupted, my voice low. And you sent me away. My mother swallowed hard. It was a different time. We didn't know what to do. You were angry, and we. No, I said. I was a child. You were adults. And you chose comfort over your son. The room was frozen. I didn't come here to give you money, I said, pushing my chair back slowly. I came here to see you face to face. To see what kind of people ask for help from the child they abandoned. Please, she said, eyes wide. Don't say it like that. But it's the truth, I said, standing. And you don't get to rewrite it just because it's inconvenient now. I walked to the door, the silence behind me heavy with everything unsaid. Just before I stepped outside, I turned back. Next time you want something, I said, try starting with an apology. Then I left. Not for the last time, but definitely for the first time on my own terms. I shouldn't have gone back. Even as I pulled into their driveway, sleek bricks laid in a tidy pattern, the kind that practically whispered wealth, I knew this wasn't about family. It was theater. A curated production of forgiveness and unity, carefully rehearsed, and I was the reluctant guest star. But I went anyway, curious what version of me they had created in their heads. The golden prodigal son. The misunderstood genius. The one they could now brag about without ever mentioning the part where they abandoned me. The front door opened before I knocked. She stood there beaming like I was home from war. Oh, sweetie, come in. It's so good to see you again. Her voice was too loud, too bright, like someone trying to drown out guilt with enthusiasm. She leaned in for a hug, and I let her, though my arms stayed stiff at my sides. Her perfume was stronger than I remembered, floral, sweet, suffocating. The house was immaculate. Every surface polished to a gleam, every picture frame placed with military precision. The air smelled like rosemary chicken and lemon-scented floor cleaner. A pristine life. A life I had never been part of. Paul's out back grilling, and the kids, well, they're inside, getting ready. They've been dying to talk to you. Dying. That word again. She kept using it like she wanted me to believe there'd been a gaping hole in their lives where I used to be. But from where I stood, the picture was complete without me. We walked through the kitchen, where an entire spread had been laid out like a holiday feast. Salads, dips, artisan bread, expensive cheese I couldn't pronounce. None of this was for me. It was all set dressing. Outside, Paul stood by a shiny stainless steel grill, flipping burgers with the confidence of a man in control of his life. He looked up and gave me a politician's smile. There he is, he said, extending a spatula-free hand. The man of the hour. I shook it. Brief. Firm. Nothing more. Glad you could join us, he said, motioning to a patio table surrounded by string lights and Pinterest perfect cushions. We've got a feast tonight. Thought we'd do it up proper for the occasion. What occasion is that? I asked, raising an eyebrow. He laughed like I'd made a joke. Family reunion, of course. The kids, Ava and Lucas, came out a moment later. Same college sweatshirts, same perfectly styled hair, same overly bright expressions. They greeted me like we were long-lost friends instead of strangers. We looked you up, Ava said with a grin. You're seriously impressive. Like, genius level. Lucas nodded, mouth already full of chips. Dude, I saw that app you built. Gridbolt? Our econ professor used it to show how real-world startups operate. That's wild. I gave a small nod. Thanks. We sat. Plates were passed around. Conversation floated like helium, all light and surface level. They asked questions, and I answered them in crisp, polished phrases. I knew how to play this game. I could be gracious, charming, even funny, without giving away a single piece of myself. My mother kept touching my arm when she laughed, leaning in, acting like this was normal, like I was one of them again. Then, when the plates were cleared and the wine was poured, she struck. So, she said, folding her hands on the table, we've been talking about the kids' futures. I looked at her, waiting. College is getting expensive, Paul added casually. Even with scholarships, the costs pile up. Loans, living expenses, books, you know how it is. I didn't nod. I didn't blink. We were thinking, she continued, that maybe you'd want to help. Just a little. A contribution toward their tuition. It would mean so much. I looked around the table. Ava was suddenly very interested in her wine glass. Lucas shifted in his chair. Paul kept smiling, but it had thinned. I leaned back in my seat. Help, I said, slow and steady. You mean pay for it? Her smile didn't falter. Just some support. You've done so well. It's a beautiful thing, what you've built. And now you want a piece of it. No, she said quickly. It's not like that. We're a family. We support each other. My jaw tightened. I stared at her, really stared, until the makeup started to look like a mask, until her carefully constructed warmth cracked just slightly at the edges. Support each other? I repeated, like when you sent me away, when I turned 16 and suddenly didn't fit the family dynamic anymore. Her face froze. You didn't call. Not once. Not for birthdays, not for holidays, not even when I got into college. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I cut in. You made a choice. You started over with a man who didn't want someone else's son in his perfect little life. So you erased me. The silence that followed was heavy. Real. No more acting. Lucas cleared his throat. We didn't mean to. I turned to him. This isn't about you. Then to her. Don't sit there and pretend we're family. You didn't miss me. You missed the story you could tell at dinner parties. The son you left behind who became a millionaire. That's what you want. Not me. Just what I represent. Her voice wavered. I made mistakes. But I still love you. No, I said. You love what I've become. You don't love the boy who slept on a cot in Uncle Ray's spare room, working 2 jobs just to eat. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't feel satisfaction. Just a dull ache. The kind that comes from finally speaking truth into a void where love used to live. You think this is about money, I said, standing. But money is the only thing you understand now. I pulled out my wallet, placed 2 crisp $100 bills on the table, and slid them toward Paul. For dinner, I said. Thanks. Then I walked away. Through the manicured yard, past the glowing porch swing, and into the night air that tasted, for the first time, like freedom. She called me 2 days after that dinner. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't surprised. Not by the fact that she called or by what she said. What surprised me was how calm I felt listening to it. Her voice still tried to be gentle, as if cushioning the blow of her own choices in soft velvet. Hey, it's Mom. I think we got off on the wrong foot the other night. I know things were said, hard things, but I just want you to know, we're still family. We always will be. I hope we can talk soon. I miss you. I played it again, not because I missed her voice, but because I needed to hear how easily she lied. I sat in my living room, the city skyline flickering in the window behind me, her words curling through my speakers like smoke. We're still family. That was the lie she told herself. That even after everything, after tossing me out like some clutter she couldn't make space for, she could just say the word family, and it would undo the silence, the abandonment, the years spent in the shadows of someone else's perfect home. That word was her shield, her justification, her absolution. But to me, it was a scar. Family doesn't discard you when it's inconvenient. Family doesn't pretend you don't exist until you're headline-worthy. I still remembered the night she told me I had to leave. 16, a backpack, a box of clothes, and a forced smile on her face. You'll be better off with your uncle, she said like it was a kindness. But what she really meant was, you're not welcome here anymore. She thought I'd forget. Thought time would dull the edges of what she did. But I remembered everything. I remembered the sound of her heels clicking down the hallway as she walked past my room without knocking. I remembered the way she smiled wider around Paul and laughed louder when I was silent. I remembered eating cold dinners alone at the kitchen counter while the 3 of them ate out on the patio. She called it a phase. That was her new story now. That it was a difficult time for everyone. That things got complicated. That I was acting out and they didn't know how to help. But the truth was simpler than that. I didn't fit her new life. And she didn't have the courage to fight for me. I wasn't a rebellious kid. I wasn't a troublemaker. I was a teenage boy trying to stay afloat in a house that had stopped making space for him. And eventually, I stopped trying. I shut down. I shrank. And when she sent me away, I didn't argue. I just left, carrying the weight of her rejection like it was something I had earned. But I hadn't earned it. I was just the easy one to let go. Now, after all these years, she wanted to paint over the past with a few kind words. She wanted to pretend the wound she left didn't still bleed beneath my skin. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank screen, and for the first time in a long time, I decided to tell the truth. Not to her, not directly, but to the world. I started typing. I was 16 when my mother told me to pack my things. She had remarried. Her new husband had 2 perfect children. I didn't fit the family dynamic, she said. I wrote everything. The cold dinners, the silence, the feeling of being erased, the struggle that followed, the nights sleeping on a cot in a stranger's home, the jobs, the hunger, the relentless drive to prove that I mattered. Not to her anymore, but to myself. I didn't name names. I didn't seek pity. I just wrote the truth. My truth. And when I was done, I read it back slowly. It felt raw and unfiltered, but real in a way that nothing else had in years. I posted it anonymously, on a platform where people told their stories, their traumas, their rise from ashes. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few comments. Maybe nothing. Instead, it went viral. Within hours, the post had thousands of upvotes. Comments flooded in, people who had lived the same pain, who'd been cast out by the people meant to protect them. Some were angry. Some were healing. But all of them understood. I wasn't alone. And for the first time, I felt like I didn't need to be quiet about what happened. I didn't need to protect the image of a mother who had only protected herself. I didn't need to carry her version of the story anymore. The next day, my phone rang again. Her name on the screen. I let it ring. Voicemail. This time, her tone was different. No more velvet. No more fake warmth. I saw what you posted, she said, her voice sharp, cold, clipped. I can't believe you would do that. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed this family. This family. Still with the fantasy. She continued, her voice growing louder. You think that's how it happened? That we just abandoned you? That we didn't try? You're rewriting history to get sympathy from strangers. It's disgusting. I didn't listen to the rest. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't need to hear her defend the castle she'd built on my silence. Later that night, I thought about the words she used. You embarrassed me. And I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. A real one. A clean, unburdened laugh that echoed through my apartment. She was embarrassed. That was her pain. Not the abandonment. Not the broken relationship. Just the exposure. The fact that people saw the truth she'd spent years hiding beneath perfect dinners and curated smiles. I hadn't set out to shame her. I hadn't even named her. But the truth has a way of finding people, whether they want to look at it or not. And now, for once, I didn't feel like the discarded one. I felt like the mirror. She could lie to herself. She could keep pretending. But me? I'd stopped pretending a long time ago. I didn't mean for it to go viral. That's the funny part. I didn't post my story for attention, or fame, or revenge. I posted it because I needed to let it out. Because carrying it alone felt like dragging a boulder uphill every day, and I was tired. I thought maybe 5 people would read it. Maybe someone would nod in quiet recognition. I never expected it to explode. But it did. 12 hours after I posted, I had thousands of notifications, comments, shares, messages from strangers. My inbox filled with stories that sounded eerily like mine, kids who'd been cast out for not fitting into the new family narrative. Boys who were too loud, too quiet, too angry. Girls replaced by step-siblings who got the affection they were denied. Teens raised on emotional scraps, now adults trying to sew themselves back together. It wasn't just me. It was all of us. And that's what hit the hardest. Some of the stories were almost word for word what I'd lived. My mom said I was too much when she got remarried. I had to leave when her new husband didn't want me around. They called it love, but it felt like exile. I read every single comment, every private message, every late-night confession that arrived in broken sentences and capitalized rage. It was like opening a door in a house I thought I'd been locked in alone, only to find a crowd of others living the same silence. I wasn't the only discarded child. I was just one who decided to speak. And because I didn't hide behind some username, people knew it was me. My face was in that article a few weeks back, and it didn't take long before someone connected the dots. Then came the headlines. Tech founder shares harrowing story of childhood abandonment. Millionaire entrepreneur reveals painful past. I was 16 when my mother chose her new family over me, a story that resonates. Within 24 hours, it was everywhere. And then the media started calling. I didn't take any of those interviews. Not at first. I wasn't interested in turning my pain into a brand, but I also wasn't going to back down. The story was already out, and for once, I didn't feel the need to explain or soften the truth. She called again, and again. Voicemails started stacking up like they were trying to guilt me into silence. The first few were defensive. How could you do this to me? To us? We never meant to hurt you. Then came the denial. You're exaggerating. You're remembering things wrong. That's not how it happened. Finally, the fury. You've embarrassed me in front of everyone. People at church are asking questions. Paul's colleagues have seen it. What do you want from me? That one made me pause. What did I want from her? An apology? No. She wouldn't mean it. Money? I had more than enough. Closure? Maybe once, but not anymore. The truth was, I didn't want anything from her. That was the real wake-up call for both of us. She was used to controlling the narrative, to shaping it into something respectable, digestible. She was used to being the hero in her own story. But now she had to face what she really was in mine, a woman who threw her child out for the comfort of strangers. And now the world saw it too. I remember sitting at a coffee shop, tucked into the corner behind my laptop, trying to get work done while notifications kept pinging on my screen. A girl at the next table leaned over, eyes wide. Sorry, are you the guy from that story? I didn't answer right away. She smiled awkwardly. I just wanted to say, thank you. What you wrote. That was my life. You said what I've never had the courage to say. I nodded. Thanks. She hesitated. I know it probably sucks being in the spotlight like this, but it mattered. Just so you know. Then she left. Just like that. And something about that moment stuck with me. Maybe I hadn't written it for the world. Maybe I just wrote it for myself. But now it belonged to all the others like me, the ones still waiting for their apology, still healing, still finding their voice. That night, I opened the last voicemail she left. Her voice was raw this time. Tired. Angry. I hope you're happy. You've humiliated me. Paul's furious. The kids don't understand what's happening. Do you? Do you even care about what you've done to this family? I hit pause. Sat in the quiet. This family. She kept saying that. Like it still included me. She had no idea that what I'd done wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. Taking back my story. Refusing to let her version be the only one. I remembered standing in her mansion that night, hearing her ask for money for college. I remembered the smile she wore while saying it. As if none of the past mattered. As if I owed them something. But I owed them nothing. They had let go of me long before I'd ever learned how to let go of them. And now? I was free. Not because I had told the world the truth, but because I no longer needed them to believe it. I knew exactly what I wanted to do the moment I heard that last voicemail. She sounded livid. Not broken, not remorseful, just inconvenienced. Her perfect little world had cracked, and she was scrambling to tape it back together with denial and blame. No trace of accountability in her voice. No recognition of the years she'd left me on the outside looking in. Just anger that I'd finally told the truth out loud. And I realized something then. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she couldn't control how it looked anymore. She'd lived her life like a stage play, carefully lit, beautifully arranged, the roles all cast. Paul was the noble provider, Ava and Lucas were the golden children, and she was the resilient matriarch who rose from hardship and built a new life. There was no room for me in that script. At least not until I became useful. But now I had the pen, and I was done writing myself in as the quiet extra. I sat at my desk and pulled out a blank envelope. Laid it flat. Smooth, white, clean. I opened my checkbook, wrote the amount with deliberate slowness. Not tens of thousands. Not hundreds. Just enough. Just enough to make the point sharp. I addressed the envelope by hand, just like she used to do when sending out holiday cards to people she barely remembered but needed to impress. I wanted her to feel it, every inch of it. Not an email. Not a text. Paper. Ink. A message you have to hold in your hands. Inside, I slipped two things, the check and the note. The check was made out to her. Not to Ava or Lucas. To her. And not for college. That was the part that mattered most. It was for therapy. The note was simple. I wrote it like I was writing a business memo. Clear. Cold. Final. You wanted money for your children. I used mine to become the man you never believed in. I owe you nothing. But here's something for you, not for college, but for healing. Get help. Not for my sake, but for theirs. Your son. I sealed the envelope, pressed it closed with a calm I hadn't felt in years. I didn't flinch. Didn't wonder if I was going too far. There was no pettiness in it. No venom. Just truth. Measured and delivered. I had once imagined writing something cruel, tearing into her with every word she'd ever thrown at me or refused to say. But cruelty wasn't power. Detachment was. Peace was. That was the real victory, not in making her hurt, but in showing her I no longer needed her at all. I dropped it off myself. Drove to that neighborhood, that pristine cul-de-sac that looked like a postcard, parked across the street from her house, and watched the wind rustle through the trees. It was dusk. Porch lights were just beginning to flicker on. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. A couple walked by with takeout bags, laughing softly. And there I was, across from the house where I'd once been told I didn't belong. The house didn't intimidate me anymore. I walked up the steps slowly, deliberately, and slid the envelope through the front door mail slot. No knocking. No lingering. I turned and left. On the drive back, I didn't listen to music. I didn't call anyone. I just drove in silence, letting the weight of the moment settle inside me like a stone finding its place at the bottom of a river. Still, unmoving. She'd open it. She'd see the check, the message, and she'd realize that this was the closest thing to closure she was ever going to get from me. She wouldn't understand it. Not fully. Maybe she'd be insulted. Maybe she'd laugh, tear it up, call me dramatic. But part of her, deep down, would know exactly what it meant. It meant the door was closed. It meant I saw her for who she really was. And it meant I wasn't coming back. A week passed before I heard anything. Another voicemail. I didn't pick up. I was done giving her space in my head, but I listened. Her voice was tight, controlled. I received your letter. Your message was heard. That was it. Not, thank you. Not, I understand. Just heard. She'd run out of lies. Run out of rewrites. And that brief, clipped message? That was the sound of someone who realized they no longer held the upper hand. The irony is that the money wasn't the point. It never had been. I could have given her enough to pay for 4 tuitions, buy her another kitchen remodel, send Paul to play golf for a year straight. But I wouldn't. Not because I couldn't. Because I wouldn't let her believe for 1 second that her silence had earned her anything but regret. I spent that evening reviewing a pitch deck for a young founder I was mentoring. She was 19, barely keeping her head above water, building something she believed in with every scrap of energy she had. I offered to fund her first round. Quietly. No press. No strings. That's where my money would go from now on. To kids like me. Discarded. Forgotten. Told they weren't enough. Not to the people who left us behind, but to the ones still trying to outrun the echo of that door closing behind them. I looked out the window of my condo as the city lit up below, vibrant and alive, messy and full of people who had no idea how much a broken boy could rebuild himself when given nothing but the fire of rejection. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was free. And the envelope sitting in her trash can? That was the last gift she'd ever get from me. There's a certain silence that comes after the storm. Not the kind that makes you uneasy, but the kind that finally lets you breathe. That's what my life feels like now still. Clean. Honest. After everything, I didn't go back to the past. Not physically. Not emotionally. That chapter was closed the moment I sealed that envelope and left it at her door. I didn't check for a response. I didn't wait for another voicemail. I didn't wonder if she cried when she read it or ripped it up in rage. That part of my story, her part, was over. What mattered now was what I did with everything that came after. I took the pain and shaped it into purpose. No more hiding. No more pretending I was self-made in some shiny, detached way. Yes, I worked for everything I had, but I didn't get here because I was lifted up. I got here because I was let go. And I decided to become the hand I never had. I started a foundation small at first. Quiet. I called it Project Unseen. It wasn't about saving anyone. It wasn't a vanity project with press releases and photos of me shaking hands with politicians. It was about kids like me. The ones left behind. The ones scraping by in silence. The ones sitting in classrooms pretending to be okay while wondering where they'd sleep that night. The ones who got good at disappearing. We funded scholarships not just for academics, but for survival. Food stipends. Therapy vouchers. Coding boot camps. Rent assistance. Laptops. I met with the recipients myself when I could, not to show off, but to look them in the eyes and say, I see you. You're not alone. Each of their stories hit something deep in me. A 17-year-old girl kicked out for being gay, finishing high school from a homeless shelter. A kid whose mother overdosed and left him with nothing but a backpack and a dream to design video games. A boy who'd been couch surfing since he was 15, still showing up to class every day in clean clothes he washed in a public sink. They weren't weak. They weren't victims. They were survivors, builders, fighters. And I wasn't just helping them. I was learning from them. Every time I sat across from one of them, I saw a reflection of who I had been. Not just the pain, but the will. The spark that kept us breathing when we should have given up. And I knew that the best thing I could give them wasn't just money. It was belief. Because that's what I never got. No one ever looked at 16-year-old me and said, "You're going to make it." They saw a burden, a complication, a problem to be moved. Now I made sure these kids heard something different. You belong. You matter. You're not defined by the ones who walked away. And slowly, something shifted in me too. The anger I'd carried, sharp and hot, always ready to ignite, began to cool. Not because I forgot, but because I no longer needed it to survive. Healing didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. In late-night walks where I finally let myself feel the things I'd buried. In conversations with strangers who reminded me of my younger self. In letters from kids who wrote, "You made me believe I could do more than just survive." I never heard from her again. Not after that last voicemail. I don't know if she talks about me now. Maybe she tells a different story. Maybe she tells people she tried, that I was difficult, that I left. Maybe, in her version, she's the mother who did her best. And that's fine. Let her keep her version. Because I have mine. And I'm not writing it for her anymore. I'm writing it for every kid who's still waiting to be seen. I've made peace with the fact that there are apologies I'll never receive. That closure isn't something you're handed. It's something you build, brick by brick, out of the pieces you salvage from the wreckage. I drive past that old neighborhood sometimes. Not out of longing, just curiosity, to remind myself how far I've come. The house is still there, just as picture-perfect as ever. Shutters painted, porch lights glowing, a symbol of everything I wasn't allowed to be part of. I don't stop. I don't need to. Let her watch from afar, if she's watching. Let her scroll through the articles, the interviews, the features about the foundation. Let her see my name come up when people talk about impact and resilience and rising from nothing. But let her also know, none of it was for her. It was for the boy she left behind. And for everyone like him. I built a life out of what she discarded. I built a legacy out of what they thought was worthless. And I live free now. Free of needing her voice in my head. Free of waiting for a call that won't come. Free of trying to prove I'm worth something to people who never really saw me. I don't look back. There's too much ahead.